Okay, it's time for Undead, Gonna talk about skeletons today. Because, well, why not? I've been planning to talk about skeletons for months and months and months, and finally we're going to get around to actually doing it, which is why I'm going to do this right now. Okay, there it is. That sound is working good. I am early, I'm aware of this. How's it going, Aaron? Working on my next novel and I'm anxiously awaiting your class. Well, it's good to hear you. Look, I'm going to do this early, guys. I've got some things I've got to sort out, so I do apologise if I've gone too early when I should have been later. But I just feel like I need to get it done, and yes, I have an appointment with a location I don't want to talk about too much. Anyway, let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we're talking about monster tactics, and the monster tactics for the skeleton as it happens. So, summoned by spellcasters or arisen from evil spirits, this is the skeleton. And if you want information on the skeleton, there's quite a bit actually in the monster manual, and you can turn to page 272 of the monster manual to find the stat block for skeletons and a little bit about how, well, a decent number of paragraphs actually about how they would operate, and a little bit of tactical information there as well, which is very, very useful. And I use that, plus I have to say I have taken a lot of information from AJ Pickett. He has a YouTube channel and a very, very good resource for trying to figure out how monsters work. So the first thing is, skeletons are undead. Well, you knew that. They have no free will whatsoever. Really, all they do is simply follow orders given to them by the spellcaster or the person who controls them, or the entity that actually controls them. And their only purpose is to kill the living. That's it. It doesn't matter whether it's a human or a goblin or a bug. No matter how small that life is, all they want to do is extinguish it. If a skeleton has absolutely no instructions whatsoever, hasn't been given any instructions, it will tend to repeat behaviour or habitual behaviour that it might have performed during their former life, if it's not actually controlled by some sort of entity. And if it's a miner, it would continue to mine, but it really won't stop mining. Otherwise, really what you're going to deal with is a situation, if it's not performing a habitual behaviour and just repeating the same action over and over again, is it'll just sort of stand there or do nothing. So here's the problem with the skeleton, which I find quite often. How do you introduce a skeleton in your encounters? Because really the chances of having a conversation with a skeleton's almost impossible. Its first instinct is to kill the living, and it can understand a language that it knew while it was alive, but it can't speak. So how do you communicate with it? You probably won't. Okay, so if you thought you're going to get a role play encounter out of a skeleton, probably not. But as the dungeon master, you can make the game do anything you want. So if you want to make that happen, then make that happen. So here are the things that I tend to see used in terms of the skeleton. Either it's a pile of bones and they rise up into the form of a skeleton and it attacks, or a pile of bones turns into many skeletons. It's a very obvious lead into an encounter, and you do it enough times and your players will see every pile of bones as a potential skeleton and be ready, pulling out weapons and ready to fight. Okay, so it's a big giveaway. The other thing is, if you do have bones lying around that will form into a skeleton and you fail to describe those bones on the ground, I've found this happen to me a few times, the players tend to get upset, I've found, because you hadn't described and said there's bones littered on the ground. If we'd known that, we would have known that it was going to turn into a skeleton and attack us. And they're like, okay, alright, so how do you win? Try to just change the way you introduce them. Whether it's a pile of bones, which is pretty cliche, or they just lying there, or just have them say underneath something. They don't have to be standing, they could just be lying under something, and that's it. That's how you introduce them. They open up or lift up whatever they're under, and then all hell breaks loose. Okay, so as a general rule, most skeletons do not retain their soul or memories of the original creature that they were. Okay, they are a shadowy husk of their former selves, and they require very specific instructions. They need to be given very specific instructions, otherwise they'll simply perform the simplest of tactics, very rudimentary stuff. And if you're not specific with them, if you ask them to do something like fetch a pail of water, they just won't stop. They'll keep fetching pails of water, and you'll be in a situation like Mickey Mouse in The Apprentice from Fantasia, where suddenly you're swimming. Okay, so just bear in mind that if you're going to give instructions to a skeleton, it will perform the same thing over and over unless you give it sort of a cut-off period or a cut-off trigger or instruction. Otherwise, they just keep doing the same thing, or they do nothing whatsoever. Okay, so I've already talked about how to introduce the skeletons. Skeletons are really, they don't need to worry about fleeing from combat. They're not going to flee from combat unless they're actually ordered to flee from combat. They'll stay in the fight to the very bitter end. Skeletons will stick to ranged attacks if they are at range. If they are close up, they'll use melee attacks, and you've got an option of using a short sword or the short bow. But you can give your skeletons different weapons if you would like. This is really the problem with doing a tactics video for a monster like the skeleton, is they almost have no real tactics whatsoever, other than if I have a melee weapon, I will attack with that. If I have a bow, I will shoot with the bow. That seems to be essentially it. Skeletons understand the spoken language of their former life, as I said, but I've only really used a skeleton in a role play, and it was an unusual form of skeleton. It's not the one in the book. You can do that. I think I used like a skeleton family, and they weren't normal raised from the dead. Their bodies, what was left of them, were actually inhabited by their spirit, and they were sort of trapped. So that's a very specific situation. As I said, normally skeletons don't get into a conversation or do any role play, but you can do it, and I've done it in my own game. So if you wanted to do that, you could. Even with dark vision, which skeletons have, you don't really need to worry about them attacking at night. Okay, they're not really concerned about the advantages or disadvantages of being in the dark. It really doesn't concern them at all. But, you know, if they're in darkness and you're dealing with creatures that don't have dark vision, then by all means, you know, allow them to have advantage if you wanted, but certainly disadvantage if you're dealing with a character who can't see in the dark. So a dark location is easy to actually hide your skeleton, so it's not obvious that it's out in the open, if you want to sort of not have it covered by a tarpaulin or some other thing. Okay, even though skeletons are vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, which means it's going to do twice as much damage, okay, it's like the reverse of resistance, they won't try to avoid a weapon that does bludgeoning damage. Neither will they actually focus on a character who is using a bludgeoning weapon. They're not that smart, okay? They really aren't that smart. Very, very simple creatures, or should I say monsters, undead. A skeleton uses the simplest and most obvious action in a fight. So that doesn't mean that they won't go around things. You know, if there's a route that would require them to walk through an acid bath, then they're probably not going to walk through the acid bath. They'll just walk around that. Okay? Very, very simple stuff. The necrotic energy that drives the skeleton compels it to kill the living. And this is because the type of necrotic energy that's being used is evil. And I know we get into the conversation of, are animated undead actually evil or not? And really, in the book, the stat block states the alignment as lawful evil. So they're evil. But that doesn't mean you can't make undead skeletons that aren't evil if you wanted to. I've done it myself. So what we'll do is very, very quickly just pull up a scene so you can see roughly the sort of layout. So what I've done is I've given you an adventuring party. they have a very low CR rating. It's only a quarter CR rating, so they're not really that tough to take down. I find the only time I've seen skeletons cause real problems for a party is when there's quite a lot of them and the party has been level 1 or a mixture of level 1 or level 2. And I have here a bunch of skeletons, some with axes, some with swords, some with a spear, one with a bow, and the one with the bow would just stand there and shoot, and that's really all it's going to do. You're really going to find yourself needing a hole in the group for the party to engage this, because it will just stand at distance and keep shooting. Something that has a spear that can be thrown, it will just stand back and just throw the javelin, okay? Or you can just move it up and start poking the adventurers with it. Axes and swords are pretty obvious. You just remove them in. Very, very simple tactics. Don't get too complicated about anything. And they aren't really necessarily going to be using don't try to withdraw or dodge or anything like that. They're not really into disengaging and dodging. They don't grapple. You know, they all they do is if they've got a weapon, they'll just use it. And it's as simple as that. Very, very simple monster to operate. So really, that's all I have to say on the skeleton, which I know isn't an awful lot. But if you like this video, please like the video. If you think it might be useful to somebody else, then maybe share the video as well. If you're not already subscribed, then hit that subscribe button. And also, there's a bell button that will notify you when I am live and when I publish a new video. If you want to support my channel, watch more of my videos. There's quite a lot of monster tactic videos. I am currently working on a bunch more, so they will keep coming. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description there's affiliate links where you can buy stuff online if you want to. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price and you don't even buy the thing. You don't even have to buy the thing that it's linked to, which is kind of great. It's a great thing about Amazon. I also have the book depository down there sometimes. If you have any questions and feedback, in the chat box right now for live stream is the best place to start doing that. On top of that, if you're not part of the live stream, then down in the comments section, just write in your comments, you know, did you find this useful? Is there something you would like to add? Am I completely wrong and do you need to correct me? Remember, Fred is not the sole individual who knows how monsters operate. There'll be somebody out there who has a better understanding than me, and by providing critical critique on these videos, you're providing the community with better resources for figuring out how to use their monsters. So that's why I keep doing these videos, because there isn't a lot of information about how to run monsters in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so if you haven't started typing in your questions and comments now in the chat box, it's the best time is to start right now. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And there's the big 20 right there. Okay, so what do we got here? Righto. Sean, how's it going, Sean? What do you got here? Hi, Fred. Looking to run a game with lots of skeletons and zombies for new players soon. As it happens, Sean, I'm glad to hear that. So here's my video on skeletons. Hopefully there was something useful and it wasn't a waste of 13 minutes to you. But I'm also working on notes for the zombie. As it happens, I was actually writing notes on the zombie while I was sort of doing research for the Will-O-the-Wisp. So that should be coming up, I don't know when, but pretty shortly, since most things are live streamed by me now. It shouldn't be too far off. Which also means there's probably going to be an ogre zombie and a beholder zombie discussed very, very shortly in the coming weeks. Right, Tommy, how's it going, Tommy? Tar for the show, I love the ideas. Glad you like the ideas, Tommy. Otherwise, there's no point me doing this if it's not being useful to somebody. Aaron, what do you got here? Spell casting. Thoughts on a spell being cast as an action. A spell being cast as an action. Okay. And still casting a bonus action spell during the same turn. Well, okay, so here we go, Aaron. Here's the thing. It's really simple, and I thought I did a video on the topic, but maybe I haven't. bonus action spells. If you cast a spell as a bonus action, and you only get one bonus action, so you can only cast one of those, you still have an action, which means you can cast another spell. Now, we all know this. The thing is, when you cast a bonus action spell in the round, and you want to cast another spell as an action, the action spell must be a cantrip. So that's the basic core rules for Dungeons and Dragons. Okay? But if you want to cast two big, powerful spells, and you don't want to cast cantrips, and you don't really want to cast a bonus action spell, like 2 fireballs, for example, then you need to start delving in and multi-classing into the fighter and pick up the action surge, because the action surge allows you to have 2 actions. Now you can use one action, cast a fireball, use the second action provided by action surge, and cast a second fireball in the same round. Does that make sense? What you must not do, if you do this though, is cast a bonus action spell, because as soon as you do that, the other 2 spells that are actions have to be cantrips. That's just going by the rules. Okay? I think that's the easiest way to explain that, Aaron. Hopefully that was the information you required. Sean, thank you. Awesome. Looking forward to it. Yes, don't you worry. Those zombies are coming. And it won't just be the standard zombie. We'll do the ogre zombie and the beholder zombie as well. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Great. Aaron, great. I'm glad I've answered your question. And look, I am going to take off because I know it is time for dinner. And the rest of you have a good sleep or day or work or whatever it is. And I won't be back tomorrow because I'll be in hospital. So you will get a video, but I'm prepping for a hospital appointment. So you won't get any videos for a couple of days that are live streamed, but you should get some sort of pre-recorded video of some kind. Okay? I'll see you later.